let's get into our topics for the day. And we're going to start off talking about some New York Yankees. Who's better, Aaron Judge or Juan Soto? Now, Juan Soto was the clear answer for the good portion of the season, but Aaron Judge reminding us he's still the big dog in town. He has been unbelievable as of late. You look at what Aaron Judge has done. I sorted the stats here from April 24th. That was when he hit his, I believe, fourth home run of the season. Over the last 23 games, Aaron Judge is hitting 363, 500 on base percentage, 9 home runs, 813 slug. He is leading all of Major League Baseball with an F4 of 2.2. So I ask you, Patrick, who's better, Aaron Judge or Juan Soto?
Man, you're setting me up to fail here, but that's okay. That's what makes this so much fun. I think the answer is still going to be Juan Soto. He is that guy in the lineup, which, with Judge batting behind Soto for much of this season, it's going to set Soto up for success. But as you just pointed out, Judge has been the dude absolutely doing it with 10 homers in the last month, 21 RBI. So he's definitely outplaying Juan Soto in that capacity. Now, Judge isn't a great defender, despite the fact that he's playing in center field at 6'7". Like, we just haven't seen a guy like that. That being said, Juan Soto is an even worse defender, I think. So, Judge might not get a chance to show off the arm, quite that much, or make some dazzling plays out in center field and rob home runs, which we do see a lot of times from some other center fielders. But even still, I have to put the money on Juan Soto, who has maybe cooled down, and yet, again, over the past 30 days, still has an OPS of 887, still has the 6 homers, is still almost walking as many times as he's striking out. So both these guys are doing great, but I'm still going to lean on Juan Soto right now.
I actually think I would take Judge in this equation because you look at the season stats and it's remarkable how quickly Aaron Judge gained ground. He has Soto on home runs by 1 now. RBIs, Soto has 37, Judge has 30. But remember, there was a big portion of the season where Aaron Judge was one of the worst hitters in the Yankees lineup. I mean, the first couple weeks of the season, he couldn't buy a hit and he was striking out a ton. All of a sudden, he has just found his way back to being Aaron Judge. Juan Soto, you'd say, all right, well, he's going to get on base at a better clip. I'm pretty surprised looking at the on base percentage that Aaron Judge is 9 points away from Juan Soto in on base percentage. And we know that Aaron Judge has the power. So I think Aaron Judge is still the better baseball player. Here's where I will come back to a little bit. I think this year there is every chance that Juan Soto is the better player because he's got that little extra something to play for with the contract here. I think that's the question. Who's going to be better this year? I think it's a little bit more of a nuanced conversation. Who's the better baseball player? To me, my money's on Aaron Judge.
We'll get to the next topic on the next topic, but we could have 1 and 2 in the MVP race in both the American and National League. And yes, Judge and Soto being those guys, the Yankees have to hold up their end of the bargain and win that division, because that would be rather strange, I think, maybe for a wild card club to go 1 and 2 in MVP voting. Then again, a lot of the BBWAA and the way they go about it kind of wrote about that recently when it came to the National League conversation in the LA Dodgers, is that a lot of it is just the best player. Like the outcome of the team isn't quite as important, I think, as it used to be. The word value has kind of changed over time, where it was like, well, you can't be very valuable to a team that lost 100 games, but you could be the best player in baseball. Now, value is very much like a wins above replacement, that kind of the value to a front office, if you will. And so for these two guys to be doing it, one in a contract year, one in a year where I think in a way Aaron Judge almost has to prove that this contract that he signed with the Yankees isn't going to end poorly. Like, it might end okay. The last couple of years still might be rough, but you know what? The Yankees are still getting value right now, and Judge has been absolutely amazing for that. It's interesting that they are number 2 and number 3 right now in OPS. So despite that bad start you talked about, Aaron Judge does have a higher OPS, 980 to 963 over Juan Soto.
Moving forward, looking at this team and what those two guys can do together, it's just ridiculous how special they can be, not only in the regular season, but you get them in the postseason, and you can just envision them being able to sort of run the table and really do special things. To see it now coming together with Judge finally holding up his end of the bargain it's a special lineup, and it is going to be fascinating to watch them split those votes. And as we sort of look towards the odds here, Juan Soto is the favorite at plus 210. Bobby Witt Jr. at plus 250 has the second best odds. And then you get to Judge at plus 500. So if I was to advise you on where to put your money, Aaron Judge at double the odds there, plus 500, seems like that's the better bet right now than Juan Soto.
Yeah, that certainly would be a good play. And our very own Cameron Zunkel over on justbaseball.com has an article looking at some of those odds. And yeah, Bobby Witt Jr., hey, a guy that we've been highlighting all season long as one of those front runners. But look, if you're going to have a little bit of fun on BetMGM, then sure enough, yeah, you got to look at some of those longer odds where it still might come out. It's going to pay out a little bit better. And Aaron Judge would have to be a good one because right now he is surging ahead. And bottom line is, what happens in the final month of the season is going to be valued that much more. And for these two guys to be neck and neck, but one of them has more than twice the odds as the other, that means twice as much of a payout. Yeah, Aaron Judge would be a hard one to really pass up if you were putting your money anywhere.
I agree for sure. I think the only other one I'm looking at on this board, I'm seeing Gunnar at plus 600. So to me, it's like, all right, if I could have Gunnar at plus 600, Bobby Witt at plus 250, it's kind of the same thing as Soto Judge. I'm laying my money on Gunnar. But Kyle Tucker is actually Cameron's pick in the article.
Who?
He's a Kyle Tucker, the guy that we talked about last week, I believe.
I don't know of him. Who is this guy? Tell me more. Yes, of course. That's the point.
The guy that continues to be so undervalued, underappreciated. He's sitting at plus 900 odds because he has been unbelievable this year. And I guess he was Cameron's preseason pick and he's sticking with him. I think that's a really good place too to look at laying your money. Other than that, I don't really see a lot of value when you look further down the board. Like I don't see Corey Seager or Julio Rodriguez or Jose Ramirez making a late push. To me, it really comes down to those sort of five names, and Kyle Tucker with the longest odds at plus 900. I mean, imagine the narrative that could build around Kyle Tucker if the Astros find their way in the playoffs and they pull themselves out of this hole and he's the best player. I mean, that might just be enough for him to get the nod over the front runners in New York.
That would be an interesting narrative. He's almost Mr. Squeaky Clean. No batting gloves, just a regular kind of hard-nosed player that I'm sure a lot of people would look and say, oh, he's playing the game the right way, and not having those same ties to the sign-stealing scandal since he was just a young prospect at that point. So, yeah, you definitely could see something like that playing out in that capacity. And I think maybe every time we sit down and talk about these great players in this generation, we have to have a segment of like, did you see? Because did you see Gunnar Henderson going opposite field for a home run over whatever that monstrosity is out there in left field? That's impressive.
Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous power. At some point, this is just kind of a teaser for the audience here. I want to do a show where we basically just have essentially, it'll probably tie into the All-Star break, but kind of our own like fantasy draft where we almost select all the representatives for each team. We just, once you pick a guy, the team's eliminated, and I'll be pretty fascinated to see how it all kind of shakes out. But yeah, Gunnar Henderson, there's so many shortstops between Gunnar, Bobby Witt, Ellie De La Cruz. We'll talk about a little bit more later down the line today. And it's not even talking about the incumbent shortstops, but man, that home run was majestic. I mean, how he pulled that off going opposite field. Very few guys in baseball can do that.
Yeah, it's a shame that there's only one of them that will be able to start the All-Star game between Gunnar Henderson, Bobby Witt Jr. And look, they got to give some love to Anthony Volpe, obviously doing big things there for the Yankees, he'll be lucky if he could even find a spot on this roster at this point. So yeah, the MVP race I think is going to be really fun. Like you said, Julio Rodriguez in the back end, look, anything can happen. I think Jose Ramirez is more of that aircraft carrier type guy where, the walk-offs and just being so important and key in the middle of that lineup. We know about a lot of their young pitching, but because it's somewhat of a roster of no names at this point, I think people are starting to get to know Josh Naylor a little bit, but Jose Ramirez, I think, could get that credit as being that name. The Mariners have far too many pitchers. I think that, people would probably credit. So that would probably discount Julio Rodriguez a little bit, but for the most part, I agree exactly with what you're saying, that it's going to be a lot to overcome with these guys that have gotten out to a big jump to start the season.
bringing it full circle to the Yankees here, as a BBWAA member yourself, trying to get into the mind of voters, let's say it comes to the season's end and Aaron Judge has the home run numbers, but the WAR totals are close. Do you see more of a narrative that would build around Juan Soto 1 year with the Yankees, contract year, Judge already has an MVP? Like if it's almost a push when it comes to the statistics, would Juan Soto get the bigger push on the split of the votes, or they just split them down the middle and then somebody else could sneak in and win it?
I don't think we're past that stage of guys splitting votes and then they kind of cannibalize the first and second picks, right? I think you could see that 1-2. As you started you mentioning like, hey, Judge has got the most home runs. If you go back and look at 2022, where Aaron Judge broke a league record, he didn't set the major league record for most home runs. He just happened to have the most home runs in the American League. Great story, obviously, topping Roger Maris, but it was just a league record, right? And I think a lot of credit was attributed to that record. Meanwhile, go back and look at what Shohei Ohtani did. It's almost similar to a different conversation in Denver where why didn't Nikola Jokic win the MVP last year? Oh, because that would have been 3 years in a row. And like that's for all-time elite players. Well, he still ended up winning it in year 4. That's 3 out of 4. And you can't worry too much about those narratives. Just who was the best player should get it. And I think that happened in 2022. Judge, there was a really good narrative about him breaking the American League record, but Shohei Ohtani definitely was better. So I would almost tend to think that perhaps Judge would benefit from something like that than voters thinking, well, we have to share it, and Soto's going to be a free agent, and so he stepped it up, did it in New York. It's bottom line, who has those better numbers? And I don't think if it's that close, wins above replacement will tilt the scales one way or another.
No, I hear you. I hear you for sure. I mean, I go back to that 2022 race, and I actually think that Judge did deserve it because his WAR total still eclipsed Shohei Ohtani. But I do hear how anyone that wants to say Ohtani in a year that he's pitching and hitting is the most valuable player, it's hard to argue the other side because like, well, yeah, no one else did that. That's for sure. But in this instance, when you're looking at these guys on the same team, obviously the stats are gonna win out, but it'll be really interesting to see how the voters sort of weigh each of their impacts because I also think there could be so not necessarily, I don't know if recency bias is the right term, but just uh, the Yankees were so disappointing last year that Soto might get the credit for the Yankees winning the division. Meanwhile, Aaron Judge being healthy could be just as much of a reason for it. So it's going to be really cool to see how this season plays out between these two and who ultimately gets it